Welcome to episode 295 of Dial the Gate, the Stargate Oral History Project. My name is David Reed. I really appreciate you being with me here for this episode. This is one I am really excited about. Lexa Doig, who is Dr. Carolyn Lam in Stargate Atlantis. You may know her from a few other roles. We're going to hopefully talk a little bit about all of them here. So get your questions over to the mods and they will get them over to me. Lexa, welcome
Hi.
to Dial the Gate. Is it Doig? Did I pronounce it right?
It's actually Doig, and
Doig.
I was on SG-1, not Atlantis.
Did I say
But
Atlantis?
yeah, but that's okay. Joel was on Atlantis, I think.
I said I had Elise Levesque from Universe on a few days ago, and I said she was on SG-1. So I'm really batting 1,000.
But that's okay. We're all one big happy family.
Oh my gosh. Oh gosh, how are you?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
I am well. Your mother is
Yeah,
Filipina.
that is correct.
How much time did you spend in the Philippines? Have you spent any?
Technically, yes, I have, but I was like a year old when I
Okay.
went. So I have no recollection of being there. I apparently got my ears pierced there. My mother told me it took 6 or 7 nurses to hold me down. It's a really cute family story that they had to hold me down to stab me with needles to, put the earrings in. And funnily enough, side story, but I remember when I was thinking about when I waited for my daughter to ask to have her ears pierced. And only at this point did I realize that it was actually kind of barbaric to have like a bunch of adult women holding down a toddler to pierce her ears. But that's beside the point. Um, yeah, so technically I've spent a couple of months there at least, but I don't remember any of it.
I lived there for a year.
Oh, fantastic. Where did
And
you live?
I lived in Makati,
Okay.
which is one of the suburbs in Manila.
Okay.
And I was out there for PayPal at the time, training Pinoys to be more Western in their like conversation, and it changed my life. The
Oh, good. I'm
culture,
glad.
the people. They are the hardest working bunch of people that I have ever met. Make us Westerners look like chumps with how
Yeah.
hard they work. But it was a transformative period of my life, and it's just one of those things that I'll carry with me forever.
Oh, that's wonderful. Did you learn to speak any Tagalog?
Tagalog, very badly, very badly. Tiwala lang, which means trust me. So,
Wala na. Yeah, I don't,
right?
I don't, it's funny because my mother is actually from the Visayas, so
Okay.
she speaks Visayan. So I don't
Oh,
even speak Tagalog anyway. I don't speak Visayan. I only know when she's really angry with me.
of
Um,
course.
yes.
How
I know she's pissed.
right? How much of that is the Messiah though, and how much of that is just rage?
No,
So,
I think she just reverts to a language that she can speak her mind in,
right,
and
that's
I
it.
won't necessarily be as hurt because I don't know what she's saying.
There you go. How old were you when you got the acting bug? Was it
Oh my gosh, I
younger? Was it older?
young. No,
Yeah.
no, young. I was like, I wrote, this is mildly embarrassing. I wrote and directed my very first play when I was 6, 5 or 6.
Wow.
It was a strawberry shortcake play. My mother made some of the costumes. My then best friend, Karen Ong, played strawberry shortcake. I was lemon meringue.
Wow, you guys were all in.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I was
Wow.
committed. And then I think from that point on, I was just any play that I could be in school or church, because my parents were churchgoers. So any play that I could do in that realm, I would try and do. But I didn't actually think it was a valid career path.
You didn't,
Um,
or your folks didn't?
I didn't. And that
Yeah.
was largely because I didn't see anybody that looked like me on TV. So I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
it's for other people to do. But I might be able to do theater because theater seemed to have a lot more freedom in that regard. Tragically, I really I told my parents I wanted to be an actor after seeing Porgy and Bess when I was 8 because I wanted to be Porgy, which for those who are unfamiliar with that particular musical, Porgy is a disabled black man.
Okay.
I was never going to play Porgy. I mean, we're all for inclusive casting.
But you
Porgy
were
is not.
drawn to the material.
I really was. And And the music in Porgy and Bess is amazing. But yeah, I thought I would maybe go into theater. But I actually didn't have the money to go to theater school, but also started working as an actor, so I sort of learned on the job. Um, and yeah, my early work very much reflects that.
Wow. How old were you when you started?
My first on-camera job was a hosting job when I was 18
Okay.
for uh, there was I think it still exists. There's a youth network in Canada called YTV, and
Okay.
they had a an arcade, they had a game show called Video and Arcade Top 10. And I was actually on it with Gordon Woolvett, who was on
Oh,
Andromeda with me.
okay.
That's
Small
how he and
world.
I met. Yeah, I know, very small world. And yeah, it was a hosting gig. So I learned very much to read off a teleprompter.
Got to get the basics in. If you weren't
Got to get the
acting,
basics.
what were you going to be doing? You know, what was
I think my
plan
first,
B?
there wasn't one. I was too
Okay.
chaotic as a teenager. It was like,
Okay.
no, this is it. This is what I want to do. Trust
Okay.
me, my parents tried valiantly for the plan B. But I had, unbeknownst to me at the time, a not mild case of undiagnosed ADHD. So me in school, I got good grades when I could pay attention and apply myself. I was a gifted student from a young age. They pulled me out and put me in a different program due to high testing scores on something or other. Yeah, I just never could focus properly in school. So being an actor was the only thing. So I guess I had this little bit of desperation of having to make it work
Yeah.
because I didn't have a backup plan.
Well, that
And
will push you
yeah,
for
it
sure.
will. It will. Or delusion also will do the same thing.
You know, potato, potato.
Six one half dozen the other, yeah. Something like
What role has pushed you in ways that you didn't expect? What role has tested the limits of your ability to grapple with the material? Is there anything that stands out that's like, whew, this one did a number on me, or this was much more thoughtful than I expected, or the company that I worked with, or the troupe, or the cast that I had to work with really, pushed me in a direction that I didn't think I would go.
there's it's a really interesting question because I kind of look at all the roles that I've played and they've all done that to some degree for different reasons and because of different points that I was at in my life. Um, I think about I know Continuum. I did a Canadian show called Continuum that was challenging because I disagreed with the character. And because she was basically a terrorist, right? And that's not something that I think that's not a headspace I think a lot of people want to inhabit. And for me, the challenge was to go back far enough because, like I said, I don't have theater training.
Okay.
Which watching Michael's and my daughter Mia is in her second year in the same acting program that Michael went to at UBC.
Wow.
I know it's kind of funny. And watching the sort of the ground up training that she's getting in that space.
And not easy to get into, I've heard.
That one, no, I don't think so. But
Yeah.
I don't
I'm
think it's
sorry to
as hard.
derail you. Yeah.
No, that's okay. I don't think it's as hard as people think. But
Okay.
we have no gauge because she got in.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because to me, I had to figure out the character of Sonia Valentine that I was playing. I
Me
had to
too.
go far enough back in her personal history to where she was a good person, in my mind, somebody that I could relate to, and what happened to make her want to take the extreme steps that she's taken. And so for me, it was like, what would it take for me to take those extreme steps? That's not a place that I like to visit because that involves horrible tragedy and trauma and that kind of experience of life is not one that I've had. I'm very grateful to not have had that experience.
Yeah.
But I have a pretty active imagination. So that one was challenging just from that perspective of trying to make it truthful. Um And also not overthinking it. That's another thing that actors can do sometimes is way overthinking things. And sometimes it's like, no, just keep it simple, stupid.
What's
Just,
your
allow yourself to enact out. Because I actually had to get that point with Sonia Valentine. It's like, just allow yourself to act out all of your horrible impulses.
Yeah, it's easy to play like a
That you
comic
keep
book
a rein
villain.
on as a human, but there's that small Walter Mitty part of your brain that like imagines all the revenge you would get on people that piss you off. I don't know.
What's your thoughts on method acting?
Um, I don't know that it's necessary. Whatever floats your boat.
Okay.
Like I'm kind of with I think it was Sir Laurence Olivier that said that to Dustin Hoffman. An apocryphal story. I don't know if it's actually true. When shooting The Marathon Man, for those that don't know, in a scene where Sir Laurence Olivier had to torture Dustin Hoffman, Dustin Hoffman stayed up all night, like tortured himself. So he was exhausted and beside himself, and he ran like crazy, like literally was running all night, apparently, and showed up to the set exhausted and whatever for the scene, like to get into the mood of the scene. And apparently Laurence Olivier looked at him and said, "You should try acting sometime, Dustin." Um, but Dustin Hoffman was amazing. Like, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? So it's one of those things where I don't know him personally, that Daniel Day-Lewis is a very committed method actor, and
Yeah.
you can't argue with the results. He's
Yeah.
phenomenal. I think sometimes, though, there are actors that use that as an excuse to behave poorly.
I see.
That's just a personal opinion. And whatever floats your boat, whatever works for you, but I hope it actually works, because there are times where I've seen actors, um, shall we say, uh, make interesting choices behaviorally, in the service of the character, and I don't see it. I don't see the truth to what they're trying to bring in the character. So it's kind of like,
And in some cases, creeping other people out who are just in the way.
yeah.
You
And
know,
I've
it's like, whoa,
heard,
you did that
yeah,
for
I've
that,
heard,
but what happened to that person over there? You
yeah,
think you're a
I've
psycho?
heard, I've heard some interesting stories about actors that have done that on set, where like, was it Jared Leto or
That's the
whatever
one
his
I was
name is?
thinking of. You ring the
Yeah, who
bell.
is like
Uh
sending
huh.
dead rats to Viola Davis. Like, are
Yeah.
you on crack? What are you doing? Sorry.
No,
Just
it's all good. But it's interesting. I've had a number of conversations with actors, as I do, and some of them won't touch characters that they can't relate to at all, and others are like, "Well, it's Cliff Simon, it's Ball.
right.
There's no position for me to kill, billions of people, so I'm just going to get on there and twirl my mustache just a little bit."
Yeah, that's kind of it, right? Like there's certain times where you have to find the truth of the situation,
Right.
but it's always an emotional truth, right? And those emotions, whether the expression of those emotions is big, like killing an entire group of people,
Yeah.
or the expression is small, like getting mad and, doing the table sweep that you see people do all the time on television when they get mad. And I've never actually seen somebody in person do that, just saying.
Sure.
I'm so mad I swept my table, because at some point I would love the shot of them picking everything up afterwards. That's all I want to say.
God.
Um, about that, because that's where my brain goes. I think that the truth is the emotionality of it.
Yeah.
The manifestation of that truth is up to the writers and the effects department.
I've had the opportunity through Dial the Gate to get to know Rob Cooper very well
Oh, he's
in
lovely.
terms of his work.
Hmm.
And we talked about Unspeakable.
Mm.
Michael is amazing.
Yeah, he did great.
And you have a hard role as well as, I believe, a prosecutor,
Yeah,
if I'm not mistaken.
yeah.
How aware were you of that story in the 80s?
I was very
And
aware of it from
okay.
of my mother was so Unspeakable takes place in Toronto, which is where I grew up, and my mother
Oh.
was a nurse in the system in Toronto, in the hospital system in Toronto
So she
during
was
that time
dealing with
frame.
it.
She was. It was also an interesting thing too, because the upside to all of that is that with the AIDS scare of the 80s, my mother had a really great handle on it, in the sense of being a science-based medical professional. she was like, no, you can't get it through the, like, like all of the, especially teenagers. I was in high school at the time. So it's like teenagers being like, you can sit on a toilet seat and get AIDS. You can't, by the way, for anyone who doesn't know that, which I would think by this point you would. You know what I mean? Like all of that kind of misinformation that gets spread through, at that time, word of mouth, and sheer paranoia. My mother had a very blunt way of sort of being like, that's rubbish. No, that's not how it happens. You can only get it through. You can't get it from kissing. You can't get it from this. Like she was very good at dispelling some of those stupid myths in regards to how AIDS is transmitted.
Mm-hmm.
So because of that, I was aware at the time of that tainted blood scandal, because I remember my mom kind of being like, let's not get into an accident where you require a blood transfusion.
Right. Right. That's priority one.
Yeah, that's kind of
Man.
the main thing about it. Yeah.
And now being in the throes of it in Cooper's great piece of work, the miniseries, did any of that come to life at all? Especially near the end of the story when it's essentially a series of courtroom scenes,
Yeah,
very by the book.
Yeah, not for me.
Okay.
But what was interesting for me was that because Marlis Edwards is a real person. So and again, one of the challenges in playing an actual real life person, particularly in Canada, is finding information on them. And I managed to find some because there was a Dropbox where Rob gave me access to, which had a lot of their research material.
Okay.
So if I wanted to go through any of it, and I had actually added a couple of old, it's not really courtroom, I'm not sure what it was, but footage of Marlis when she was younger, a bit younger than she was in the show in Unspeakable, sort of doing her thing, because then I was able to find a little bit of mannerisms and things like that. That was probably the most challenging part in terms of research in that regard.
You want to honor the person.
Yeah.
She's still alive?
She is.
Okay.
I don't know her, but apparently Coop sent me he passed on an email that he had gotten. I think it was an email from somebody who worked with Marlis Edward, and this is like the high point of my life, who said that I nailed her. And I was like, oh my gosh,
cool.
that's so cool. I'm so happy.
Yeah.
The coolest thing about it, though, was like when they first put the wig, because I was wearing a wig before Brenda, who did hair on it, cut it. I looked like Justin Bieber. It was so funny. I looked like a cross between Justin Bieber, and because they aged me up in that show, like they did some work to make me look older. And Coop was so cute because he called me and he's like, "Are you okay if we do that a little bit?" And I'm like, "Of course I am. Like I'm an actor. I love that shit."
Let me disappear. Really yeah.
I sent a picture of myself to my brother and I'm like, I'm turning into mom. And he was like, oh God, what is that? And that's no offense to my mother. It's just nobody wants to look in the mirror and see their own parent when you're not ready for it. Let's just put it that way.
Right. And aging makeup will do that. It's like, oh my God, here it comes. I'm getting a preview.
And I'm not prepared for this. Yeah.
Stargate SG-1.
Yes.
You're joining a moving train in season 9. You've been with Michael for a little bit at this point.
Yeah.
I'm sure he's given you an info dump on everything that you've just accumulated over all this time.
Yes.
What gave you auditioned, right?
Yeah.
How did that feel to be joining his moving train?
You know what? It actually felt really normal. From the perspective of, I knew I had, as far as the cast goes, with the exception of Rick, no offense to Rick, it's just that Michael and Amanda and Chris didn't hang out with Rick really outside work. But
Rick
I
was
knew
gone.
the cast.
Yeah,
like and I knew the cast socially. I knew some of the crew socially as well. And because Andromeda had finished right before I went to join the SG-1 cast, some of the Andromeda crew had moved over to Stargate. So I also knew quite a bit of the crew as well. So it just felt kind of like this somewhat natural transition.
Okay.
Um, and even the audition process was relatively easy and kind of funny because Michael thought, based on the sides, that the character that I was reading for was a potential love interest for Beau Bridges. And I was like, I don't think so. I think like this is his daughter. And Michael was like, no, no, no. I'm pretty sure that's like a love interest for Beau Bridges. And I'm like, no. And then I did the audition, and Coop literally said to me right after the audition, he's like, I'm just trying to figure out how you would be Beau Bridges' daughter. I just went home and was like, I'm right to Michael, um, because I don't get to do that often. Don't listen to him if he ever says otherwise.
Okay.
I actually don't get to do that very often. So I was really quite proud of the fact that I correctly clocked that Carolyn Lam was Beau Bridges' daughter.
And I love how they weaved it in. Vietnam veteran, fell in
Mm,
love. My father's
mm,
a Vietnam vet.
mm.
I get it. That lovely dovetail in
Yeah,
at the end of this series. But working with Beau, especially, I'm thinking back on that scene in the Fourth Horseman where he's in a gurney and
yeah,
crying, and he's a captive audience. He's not going anywhere at this point, and you have a
yeah,
chance to tell him how he fell short as a dad.
yeah.
What was it like working with Beau?
Oh, working with Beau was amazing. That scene bugs me to this day because
Why?
if I could go back and do it again, I would just be better. It's the curse of being an actor, right? Like you always look at the work that you've done and you're like, oh shit. There's not a single thing that I've ever done that I look back on and go, yeah, nailed it. Not a
Nothing?
no, not a nanosecond. But that's just being an actor,
Okay.
right? There's like, I'm actually a little bit of side eye to actors sometimes that are like, no, I nailed it. I totally nailed it. I'm like,
Did you though?
did you? Like, and I don't mean that in an unkind way, but it's like, it's more like there's always something else. It's like who was it? I think it was Martha Graham. There's a wonderful quote. I think it's Martha Graham, choreographer, who talks about the divine dissatisfaction of being an artist. And it's that. It's like the sort of like, I'm never gonna be happy, which is why it's much better to trust a director with your performance in some respects, because otherwise you can just get lost in trying to make it perfect and you lose the beautiful, organic kind of natural interaction that you can get and the discoveries that you can find. But with that scene in particular, I just felt I really muscled my way through it. But it was a lovely one to do. Um, and I think it was interesting because I think my choice of being angry about him being sick, was a bit controversial to some people. Um, in that way. You know what I mean? Like being angry that he's dying, not because I'm hurt and I'm gonna miss my dad, but it's like, how dare you die? I
Okay.
still have shit to give you. You're not
Yeah.
allowed to die. Was a little bit of a controversial choice, but that one I still kind of stand by because I like those kinds of choices, those ones that are um a bit off center or a bit unexpected in the sense of exploring the not necessarily nice parts of relationships
Hmm.
is an interesting thing for me to do as an actor.
You are stepping into the shoes of a beloved role in
Hmm.
the show.
Yeah,
Terrell played her character very mother hen. These are my people. I am
yeah,
responsible for their health. Donna Davis and Terrell had kind of a mother father role to
right.
the SG-1 team. And you're coming in there and right on the page, this is a hard-edged character with bit of an axe to grind. We don't really know why at the beginning. We find
Right.
that out. But you have to take the material as it is and play it within those boundaries. She's not going to be all,
Yeah,
lovey-dovey and, these are my people. And she's she's there to perform her job and probably stay away from her dad as much as she can, you
A
know?
little bit, yeah.
Yeah. Was that, did you get any kind of, maybe you don't read the fan information, the fan responses, but were you kind of like, wow, she's rough, or did you just like, yeah, that's who this character is at this point in her life?
You know what? That to me, it was more the latter. Just from the standpoint of Terrell is Terrell. Like she's
Right.
amazing, and there's
Right.
no way I knew going into it. Enough. I felt like maybe enough time had passed since Terrell's character's passing. Um, that it didn't look like an immediate replacement. And thankfully,
Right.
they wrote a completely different character. They didn't write, Terrell 2.0.
No.
Um, which was a relief for me. And I also thought, from my perspective, being uh, put in a position of being the chief medical officer on a top secret base, like the certain things have to give for you to be able to get to that place at the age that my character was at.
Right.
And I thought one of the things to go was social skills.
Yeah, she's gonna have to, she's so young. She would have had to have sacrificed something.
Yeah,
She didn't party a lot, I
probably
wouldn't
friendship.
think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sacrificing friendships and relationships and things like that. So her social skills are not necessarily going to be are in the motherly way that Terrell's were. But also that there's a defensiveness that comes with being young for your age, but also being put in positions of responsibility.
Got to prove
Um,
myself.
yeah, that I think there was a little bit of a chip on her shoulder in that way. And then finding out that she's basically working for her dad.
Oh, can you
Super
imagine?
pissed her
I
off.
would have loved to have seen the look on her face when she got her assignment and she read the headline of commanding
Yeah,
officer. She
yeah,
would have been like,
exactly.
"Oh, shh."
Like, are you fucking kidding me? Although it was very funny because I don't know if you've heard this story, but I've told it a couple of times at conventions, is Bo, before our first scene together, he wanted to have that argument that Landry and his daughter would have had at some point where they just laid into each other.
Between the
So
two of you.
literally, yes. So we improvised just off stage this whole screaming match. And then literally when they called rolling, Bo stopped talking, turned around, walked away. And I'm like, I walk into the scene and I'm like hot. I was like still fuming from that interaction that we had, like
Didn't
not
know this
genuinely
story.
as Lexa, but
Yeah.
still bring around that emotion. And it was hilarious because I think it was Andy Makita that was directing that came around afterwards. And he's like, okay, you're a little hot. Can we take it down a notch? Because Bo, being the consummate professional, was fine. Just took that experience, filed it where he needed to file it, and then went into the scene playing his scene. Whereas I was like still carrying around that rage.
As she kind of would have to a degree, but she
To
would
a
have had
degree, but
nights to sleep and think about
yeah,
it. But
it wouldn't
wow.
be as fresh. Yeah. So, but it was useful. So like even working with Bo was an education in that regard too, like sort of the freedom, because when you're a Canadian actor in a service town like Vancouver, often the attitude when going to work is to try and figure out or to give them what they want. They being the director, the producers, whatever. One thing that I love about working with a lot of American actors, somebody like Bo personifies this, is the commitment to being an artist, which
Mhm.
is, I'm going to give you what I have and we can work together, which is a terrific and a far more, um, it's a far more freeing, you become a better actor when you do that. But it is something that I think a lot of Canadian actors are afraid to do because they're viewed often as this, like, just hit your mark and bark and give us what we're looking for, as
Oh,
opposed to be an artist and bring what you have to the table, in terms of the interpretation of your character. So that part of it was really freeing for me as well.
wow. I didn't know that story. Thank you for sharing that. That's really cool. And it makes
Oh
a
no.
lot of sense though that that's his kind of approach. This is a conversation that they probably would have had, if they didn't have it before, they would have had it later and we would have gotten a chance to see it. So the implication
Yeah.
is, yeah, they've already gotten it out of their system. Um,
Yeah. Or it's unresolved in that they've had that argument.
did you get the
You know,
impression that he requested her Is that the impression that you got from it, or was it just happenstance that they got assigned together?
No, I think he requested her.
Oh no! So now
Yeah.
she's got that baggage to deal with. It's like, would I really have gotten here under my own merits? Now now I'll
Yeah.
never know.
Yeah,
That would
I
piss me
think it's
off.
a combination of things. I have a I mean, I never actually talked about it with Bo, but I felt like there was probably a list of doctors that
Yeah,
up for that particular job, and he approved
yeah,
Carolyn.
probably.
Yeah,
Wow.
you know what I mean? Like, just I think she did get there to a large degree on her own merit, but he definitely, I think, was very happy to have her work there to try and fix their relationship in some capacity, because I
Very
do think
much.
that was the hardest thing, because Bo is such a lovely human.
Yeah.
To look at that sweet face of his when he was like trying so hard to connect, and for her to be like, "Ah, fuck you."
Go ahead. You yell at that face.
I'm like,
Uh,
oh yeah.
I was on set during the filming of the episode where you guys go to the other planet and everyone is dying from the prior plague.
Oh right.
And I saw an exchange between Mitchell and Landry. There was a great scene that did not make it into the final cut. And I've always wondered if Cameron and Carolyn had a relationship prior to the show. Did you get
Um,
that impression?
I
Because it
did not.
suggested that they were a thing for a little while at least, and then came
Right.
together on the base.
Um, I never got that impression. I got the impression that maybe they were angling Carolyn to be a love interest for
Okay.
Mitchell.
Okay.
Eventually. It
Okay.
never happened. I think it was interesting because I know I've been asked if there's anything more that I would have liked to have seen with Carolyn, because she wasn't in a ton in season 10.
Hmm.
And I'm like, well, there was like kind of galactic annihilation in the Ori, and like all kinds of like
Gets in
really
the
big
way.
things that they needed to maybe wrap up, that were possibly a little bit more important than my character. Call me crazy. So in the service of the overall story, I think Carolyn sat exactly where she needed to sit. But yeah, I mean, it would have been interesting. That would have been hilarious to see Michael's reaction if they made me a love interest for Ben Browder. Although Ben is lovely, please don't get me wrong. I think Michael might have had an objection or two about
Oh, some of the
that.
best photos, Stargate photos, are of Ben planting a smooch on Michael online. Uh,
Oh my God, they're hilarious. Well, never mind the fact that it gets even funnier that when they're at conventions sometimes, it's like people will mistake them for each other.
yeah, it's a real thing.
It's hilarious to the point where I think Ben was, because we just saw Ben recently in Austin,
Yeah,
no,
yeah,
San
Space
Antonio.
Con.
Yeah, and where he was talking about being at some convention where they had provided the photos, and he was like, none of those are me. They're like, yes, they are.
They
And he's
were
like, no, they're
Michael?
Michael.
Guys, you haven't watched the show. Oh no.
I just thought it was hilarious.
Jeez. I love the
I can tell
scene.
them apart. Just to be clear,
I'm
I can tell.
glad. I love the scene near the end of the series in an episode called Family Ties, where we haven't had you for a while, and there was always a question in my mind: how are they going to resolve this? Are they going to resolve this kind of family dynamic? And a wonderful scene. The actress is named Lillian. I will butcher her last name. I'm not even going to try it. Where you've made it clear, mom's in town. Try
Right.
reaching out to her. She's obviously open-minded. It was a wonderful scene at this restaurant. To just not have any kind of finality, but a little
Right.
bit of hope for the future. Yeah, he can have his cake and eat it too. He can have the command of his career and still have his family.
Right.
That was a great
I
scene.
just remember drinking a lot in that scene. Unfortunately, to keep myself entertained, my instinct is always to kind of go for what I think is the funniest part of it, especially if the scene is already kind of serious and awkward. to find the funny in something is just so I just remember taking my glass of fake wine or whatever and just chugging it back. And I don't think they kept it, but I was like, I can't handle this. I'm just gonna drink all of my fake grape juice.
But it would have
But
made
yeah,
sense for the character. Her parents are together in the same space since God knows when. You know,
yeah,
she's
and
got
she
to have a pull her ripcord.
exactly, and she doesn't know how to handle it either because like this
No.
is, it is that awkward thing of like being a kid who's and I don't know experientially because my parents are still together.
Yeah.
They've been married for Lord, I have no idea, over 50 years now. Um
Wow.
so yeah,
Wow.
they've been married for a long time. So I don't know what it feels like to be a child of divorce,
Yeah.
but I can imagine that it's, the thing that you always want is for your parents to be together, but you've lived this whole life with them being apart. How do you forget all of that and then have like there's just a lot going on in your mind. So to have and your emotions to then not know how to deal with any of it is just grab your wine,
We've all
drink.
been at those awkward tables where
Oh yeah.
our running dialogue in our head is, wow, this sucks. You
Yeah. Or
know?
this is
It's like,
happening and I don't know what to do.
but they've got you on a technicality and you ain't going anywhere,
Yeah,
because
exactly.
you're the lubricant between these gears.
Yeah.
So, and it's one of my favorite scenes from the show.
Oh,
And
it was fun to shoot.
they wanted to have you back for Continuum for that opening sequence where they run through the whole SGC. I talked with
Mhm.
you briefly. That's the last time I saw you after the premiere of that, and you said we were going to get you, and timing just couldn't make it work. I think.
I think it was that. I can't remember exactly what it was, but yeah, I think there was something about that because there was also, was that the one where they were frozen
They
on
went to
the
the Arctic.
when they went to the Arctic, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think Michael couldn't go to the Arctic. There was
Right.
something because they also, yeah, because they had asked if I could go, and I really wanted to go to
Wow.
the Arctic, and there was some reason why I couldn't, and I can't remember what it was. Michael would probably remember because he's got a
Okay.
better memory than I do, but yeah, that one was I remember being bummed.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. No, that was a remarkable experience for that team.
Oh
That
yeah,
was just and what a good movie. What a good movie.
I
And
know, so
Claudia
good.
just acted her ass off.
She is the best. Honestly, like that's another thing too, is the opportunity to work with and become friends with Claudia Black was like so amazing because she's one of probably the most underrated actors in terms of I don't know why she isn't massively, hugely famous because of the amount of talent and intelligence that woman has. Um, she should have like Kate Blanchett's career. Like honest to
Right.
God, she's that good. She's
Absolutely.
incredibly good. So to get to work with her more peripherally than anything else, but mostly just to be friends with her was amazing. And I know Michael loved working with her because of that level of talent and commitment.
Well, they gave each other so much. And I'm sure that there were days on set that were just so that could have been frustrating. But
I
they,
think they just laughed a lot.
yeah, but he is, he is, she is the irritant, that makes his oyster make that pearl,
Yeah,
and it
that's a
all paid
perfect way.
off in Unending, where
Yeah,
we got to see an aspect of, okay, what could this have looked like had it continued, had they been cornered into an existence where they had nothing else. Okay, fine. Let's let our guard
yeah.
down. What an end to the show.
Oh yeah.
Man, oh man. What did you think of him in the makeup?
I thought it was hilarious. I can't help it. I thought it was hilarious. I just think
Uh,
it's funny.
can you?
And interestingly enough, not inaccurate. Anyway.
Seen the folks?
Yeah,
Jeez.
exactly.
Can you briefly tell the story of meeting him?
Yeah, we met on the set of Andromeda when he was hired to interestingly enough to play a love interest to my character. And I apparently I guess won him over when I told a joke. Andromeda was largely studio shot, so we didn't have like we had our personal trailers, but we didn't have like a hair makeup trailer per se because we were in studios. So we had rooms that we called the trailers, but they were just basically, there was the makeup room, the hair room,
Mm.
and across the hall from the makeup room was the special effects makeup room. So if somebody had to go and get, certain bits and
Mm-hmm.
bobs put on, they would be in that room. And I was in the hallway between the two telling a joke, which I don't know if I can share.
Please
Because
share
it is, well, it's a
if you're
visual.
willing.
Can I do it? I think I can do it. Hang on. So the joke is, and I have to see if I can do this, if it will work. The joke is, sorry, you're seeing me in my track pants because I didn't expect to get up. But the joke is, um, trigger warning, it's not polite, it's a grown-up joke. But how do you jack off a dinosaur? Like this. Okay, so anyway,
Because they're so big.
because they're so big. So I was doing this in the doorway, and apparently that joke won him over. We hadn't actually met yet.
Oh,
But anyway.
that's great. Oh, man.
Yeah, there we go.
Jeez.
But yeah, we met, and it was it was kind of like we just kind of knew,
Is there...
which was a bit awkward because I had a boyfriend at the time and I had to break up with him.
Okay.
But we weren't, we'd only been dating for like a couple of months. Not to dismiss my ex-boyfriend because he was a lovely man.
Of course.
Still is a lovely man. But Michael and I kind of knew.
So...
Like I used to meet people that would say, "Oh, when you know, you know." And I'd be like, "Shut up. Shut up.
Yeah.
How did you know?"
Yeah.
But I
You'll
actually
know.
kind of get it because that same thing happened with myself and Michael.
21 years married.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
That's great.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
Is it the humor that... So it was the humor that chiefly did it. Sensibility. His... Like, I've had the pleasure of knowing him now for a while, just through professionally, but
Right.
his intelligence, his sense of humor and timing, his just perspective on humanity, great guy.
Oh,
Great guy.
he's a good one. It's funny because like you mentioned the humor, and quite literally it's kind of like I say the same thing about having kids. Not a day of my life goes by where there isn't at least one hearty belly laugh as a result of just, and he and I have very similar senses of humor. So we definitely play off of each other just because it's entertaining. Like it's just our way of communicating with each other. But the hilarity is our kids have now inherited that.
Of course.
Which gets even funnier when it's now like a multi-person kind of thing.
Now you're confronted with yourselves.
It's so funny. It's so funny. Our son is turning into Michael. It's hilarious to the point where I'm like, dude, that is an unearned cynicism.
Yeah.
You are 18 years old. You have not earned that cynicism. And it's hilarious because now he's like, I kind of have, Mom. I'm looking around at the world. I'm seeing what's going on. And I'm like, okay, you're still young to be that cynical and
but after COVID, we all aged more years than we expected.
I think so. I think COVID did a real number on some, especially the younger generation.
Yeah, we've all been like, well, I did go through that horrible mess, so give me a couple of bonus points, please.
Yes, which they absolutely get. But my son's very introverted, so I don't think he minded so much. Hated school. And he was like online with his friends all the time.
Was
like,
he a gamer? Yeah.
So he was online with his friends. So it didn't affect him in the same way as it affected our younger daughter, who was in school and a very social person and couldn't see her friends. That I think it affected her a little bit more in that way. But it was hilarious. Now I'm like to my son, because he's taking a gap year, I'm like, get out of the house.
Yeah.
You need to get out of the house.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah,
no, there's a certain... I would be so nervous because I went straight from high school into college. I'd be so nervous that I wouldn't go back. I thought about doing that. I'm like, I've got to get through it. Otherwise, I'm going to get hooked into a job. I'm going to find something that I love. And I'm going to always be disappointed at myself for never having finished my schooling,
Right.
But yeah, I understand some kids who've, got to do it. So,
Well, it's funny because both of our daughters took our older daughter took a bunch of gap years
ah,
because she was trying to figure out what she wanted to do. But our younger daughter took a gap year, changed her major. She was going to go into human rights, social justice, and human rights at Simon Fraser University, and in
ah.
year decided to switch to acting. She was gonna be a human rights lawyer. Sorry. Um, but no, we're very happy. But
We're very happy. We're very happy.
well, just from the standpoint of like it would make us massive hypocrites.
Well,
Like, no, don't go into acting. But
they're
at
gonna
least
find their place, you know.
and she's an artist. She always has been. Like
Ah,
you
okay.
can't really see it, but like that painting back there, she
Okay.
painted that. Not that you can really see it. I just realized it's kind of fuzzy, but she's always been an artist. She's a musician. She's already put out some
Is this
music.
Mia?
Like,
Are we talking Mia?
yeah,
I
Mia.
love her single. I love her
Oh,
single.
thank you.
I have it.
She's
I
got
play
another
it
one out.
all the time. Oh, really?
Yeah, she's got another one out. Are you talking about yesterday or
Yesterday, I play it all the time.
she's got another one called The Sound of It, so you can find that
I
on Spotify.
will. I will check that out, and I'll add the link in the description below. Everyone, check out
Oh, thank you.
Yesterday.
Yeah.
It's really good. It's soft, and then it just hits these beats, and it's a great piece of music. They are
Yeah,
talented, your kids.
she's a talented kid and she's self-taught. So like all of the like she has a producer named Trent who finishes the song for her,
Yeah.
but she plays all of the instruments with the exception of the drums because she doesn't actually play the drums, but she plays like the guitar solo
Gosh.
in The Sound of It is her. Like she taught herself that. So I mean,
Wow.
even Michael said it, and it's like this kid has always been an artist,
Yeah.
right? So it's like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Apple
like
doesn't
we'd
fall
be
far from the tree.
well, I mean, the apple is much better than the tree. And both Michael and I will say like she's
Ah.
far superior in a lot of respects. And Sam wants to like he's already started writing scripts and things like that because he's always been a storyteller since he was a toddler and had all of his excuse me, his stuffies that he would like have these like wild storylines for all of his stuffies that he would be happily in his room by himself because he had this incredibly active imagination that would like create these worlds. So I don't think I think there's a certain amount of not getting in the way of your kids when they realize what it is that it's actually calling to them and when they find their passion. But also, there's that fine line of supporting them
Yeah.
without pushing
I'm
and without
having
making it more important to you than it is to them.
I'm having flashbacks of like go to college, get your degree, and then get one job that you'll have for 50 years and you're going to be
For the
happy.
rest of your life.
And it's
Like
just not how it didn't work out that way,
and I don't think it ever was necessary. I mean, by design, I think it was in some ways supposed to work out that way, but it certainly
Sure.
doesn't work that way now.
No, we find what we want, as we move through life. And
Yeah.
I think the generations have changed in terms of what we want. If this doesn't work out, within a certain period of time, let's try something else.
Yeah.
But as long as you're supporting yourself, who cares?
Yeah,
If you're not, then that's a problem.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like as long as whatever you choose to do, you can find a way. If you're not going to monetize the thing that you love, fine, but make sure that you have enough skills to be able to have a job that gives you enough of an income to support yourself.
That's it.
But
That's
if
it.
you can find a way to monetize the thing that you love and make an income out of it, great. What's the old saying? It's like if you do what you love for a living, you'll never work a day in your life.
That's right.
You know what I mean? Which is partially true. I would say that there are always aspects of everything, even the things that you love, that you don't love.
No, they're necessary means to an end.
Hate auditioning.
Oh man! And now that it's on this,
if you don't do it, you don't get the job. So
well, and I'd like to tap into that for just a second. You were talking about how you were frustrated with the choice that you made in The Fourth Horseman with that scene. Mm-hmm. Obviously made, a seasoned actor go into tears. So I think you hit the note.
I think Bo did on his own, but anyway.
Well, you know what? I don't want to know that, Lexa. Now with Zoom interviews and submitting on tape, you don't get to take a note from
No.
a producer or a casting director. You get to look at the material and pick one and pray.
Yeah.
How screwed up is that?
It's very screwed up. There are a lot of actors. It's interesting because, like, Michael and I are very fortunate in that we're married to each other. We're obviously actors. It's not difficult if I have an audition or if he has an audition to say, hey, can you be my off-camera reader? And to know that you've got a relatively decent performer off camera who can do that. We're also night owls, so it's totally normal to have to put an audition down at 11 o'clock at night. Like
Yeah.
that doesn't, we're very fortunate to also have a home that has a space that we have dedicated as a taping room.
You go in there and you do it.
Yeah, but most actors don't have that. So the reality is that most actors have to either go to a studio and pay for the space, or they
Oh,
have to like rearrange their living room to make a backdrop to set the thing. Like it's not a simple
yeah.
process for them to self-tape. And it often comes at a cost to the performer. So, that aspect of it is very challenging for a lot of performers. But even those like Michael and I, who actually really enjoy self-taping from the standpoint of we look at it as an audition, we give ourselves like maybe half an hour max, absolute max, but about 15 minutes to get the audition down and be like, okay, it is what it is, and send it off.
So you don't spend 10 hours on it.
No,
Okay. I
no,
know
but
actors who do.
yes, but that's also has turned into a bit of a problem is that sometimes there are performers that spend 10 hours getting the perfect audition. They get hired from that tape, but they can't reproduce it on set,
Oh my God. Yeah.
right? Because
Yeah.
they're not accustomed. You get three takes. Like, you know what I mean? Like
That,
you
and then
don't
it's
literally
gone.
get only three takes. I don't want to create that impression, but for the most part in television, you don't have 10 hours to shoot your coverage of a scene. It doesn't work that way. You've got to get through the entire day's work. So that is proving to be a challenge for some producers and directors that are hiring actors. And kind of like what you said about sending this tape out into the void, you get no feedback. You don't know, was that good? Was it bad? Like,
Yeah.
was it, or you get a redirect that comes from the producer director to the casting director to your agent, and your agent says they want you to retape, but play it more this way.
Right.
That's at another cost if the actor doesn't have the facilities in the
Again.
capabilities within their own home to just do it whenever. So there's a lot of like actual logistical problems with that. But yeah, artistically, it is more challenging because you don't have that interaction in the room where somebody can say, hey, can you try it a little bit more like this? And can you try it a little bit more like that? Which often, sometimes the redirects in the room aren't because they necessarily want to see it in this way that they're directing you. They just want to see that you can take direction.
Makes a lot of sense.
And you
Yeah.
don't get to do that with the self-tape thing. So it's a challenging thing. There are pros and cons to it. And trying to address the cons but keep the pros is always a
But
challenging thing.
but that's also a great note that I never considered. Don't spend 10 hours on this. Spend a half an hour on it. Try to simulate a day on
Yeah,
set,
yeah,
so that you get accustomed to the pacing, so that when you do get it, you can go onto the
yeah,
set and you're not screwed.
yeah,
So, makes a
yeah.
lot of sense.
I mean, for any actors that might be watching this that are out there that have to do that, don't wait for the perfect take, right? Do the
Right.
best that you can in the time. Give yourself a time limit to get it done. That is a more honest reflection of your ability to work in television. Let's just put it that way.
Absolutely. I have a few fan questions if you got a little bit more time.
Absolutely.
Tracy, have you ever found yourself drawing from personal experiences or we kind of answered this one, but I'm curious to come back around to it. Personal experiences or emotions for any of the characters you've played, or do you prefer to keep things separated from your personal experiences? And okay, this is a character's space. Let's explore this space on in its own silo.
For me personally, I don't think there's actually a way to separate it wholesale.
Okay.
From the standpoint of like, yeah, you do, Stanislavski's magic if like you do very much use your imagination to imagine a circumstance where you are, bringing truth to these imaginary circumstances. That's essentially what acting is. Um, and because of my life experiences, that's the only lens I can only view the world through my lens of my life experiences. So
Mm-hmm.
yes, I'm always bringing my experiences and perspectives on things to every character that I play. That's me being an artist and using that through. But I mean, in terms of like a direct correlation, not really, not anymore. Like, I think I did a little bit more when I was younger, the concept of substitution. I think I used that a little bit more when I was younger, when I didn't have as much life experience and I didn't trust my life experiences.
Mm-hmm.
Which might sound odd, but as an actor, that is something that you have to kind of go, no, I know what I know.
That's your toolbox, though.
Yeah.
I can't remember which actor told me. I've got to remember this because I'm always referencing it. But I'm a French horn. You know, this is what I do. I'm not a fiddle. Yeah. I can't. Those notes would sound differently from me. I am a French horn. So I think it's a great way to kind of look at it. Raj Luthra and Cameron LaRocque. Was there ever a day on set or a project, you don't have to name the project, where it's like, oh my God, I can't wait to get this done. And when you were through, it's like, I never hope I have to deal with that again. And how, is it pep talks? What do you give yourself to get through that? Because you're a professional and you got to do your job and you got to get the day in.
I go home and I bitch to Michael. I fume and I rage, and Michael, God bless him, rages right along with me. And like, do I need to come to set? Do I need to come to set?
Yeah, he's upset for you.
Yeah, it's like, no, I just need you to hold the space for me to lose my mind. And then honestly, the knowledge that every job comes to an end is very useful knowledge.
Yeah. Did you ever have to talk him down from really wanting to go into set?
Oh yeah, there are times where I've absolutely had to say like, no, honey, no, I don't.
This is not going to make it better.
Yeah, that will not make it better. But I think it makes him feel better, the idea that he could go down there and protect his wife. Yeah.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. The Time Prophet, Lexa, how often do you go back and watch something that you've created, or do you not at all? All the time? Almost never.
Not by choice.
Ooh.
Like, it either shows up on TV. And Michael will be like, hey, look, it's Andromeda. And I'll be like, oh God. But yeah, no, not often. I mean, sometimes, like, I actually went down the YouTube rabbit hole of trying to find, because I was trying to prove something about myself at a certain age to somebody else. And it was like footage from Video and Arcade Top 10. Which is not cute, but I wasn't acting. In my defense, I was being a host, but at the same time, it was like I think it was to show how much my daughter Mia and I look alike at around the same age.
She's beautiful.
And some of the very, very questionable eyebrow and fashion choices of the early to mid 90s is good times. But yeah, like no, not by choice, because I'd rather live in the delusion that I'm a good actor than see the proof that I'm not as good as I think I am. So, but I do actually have to see my stuff when I self-tape, because I have to edit the themes together and send them off. But I kind of just watch them once to make sure that I sound like, for technical reasons, and then just send it off into the ether because I don't want to know.
So each of you do your own editing then?
Yeah, you have to do all of it. You have to, tape the scenes and then edit them together with titles and send them off.
Wow. So fancy now.
It's not that difficult. Like, I've got it down to a fine science now on iMovie. Like, I just do everything on my phone because it's just so much easier. But yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Dwayne Haskett, was there any unique differences from Stargate to Andromeda other than, well, you were wearing cotton?
Yeah, that part. It was nice to be able to play a character who was grounded in a reality that I was familiar with.
Okay. You played the 3 roles in Andromeda, right? I've not seen it.
Kind of.
The ship, a hologram, and an android.
Yeah, I mean, right? they're all the same entity.
Okay.
Andromeda is technically the artificial intelligence. So that's just how she manifests. Okay. I made the choice to kind of separate them into different aspects of her personality for my own sake, especially when I had to do scenes with myself. It just made it, and the writing was kind of leaning that direction anyway. But when I started to really make that choice, they really started writing it that way.
The ship talked with herself.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. Oh man.
It was fun and a little hectic to shoot those scenes.
I bet.
It was definitely fun. But so there was so there was the what we called the Andromeda AI, which showed up on a screen.
Uh-huh.
There was the hologram, and then there was Rami, the robot, who was the android, who was the most kind of human-like
Yeah.
of the three of them. But they got so that the hologram was less emotional, and then the AI was completely unemotional. So kind
Wow.
of like the closer to human presenting, the more human she got.
I've got to watch this show. I've been meaning to for a long time.
Oh,
So,
yes. Yeah, I mean
absolutely.
it's an interesting show. It's a little bit dated in terms of the. That's what I appreciate about Stargate is that it's not really dated. I think it stands up. Andromeda doesn't just from the visuals perspective. We didn't have a lot of money on that show, so
B made it work.
but they did like the work that was done with the money that they had, I thought was really good.
Yeah. Last question for you. Brain Pain asks, what do you think is so unique about science fiction compared to some of these other genres that you get to play with?
The thing that I love about science fiction is the allegorical aspect of
Yeah.
it, and the aspirational aspect of it. I
Yeah.
like I grew up watching Star Trek, the original series.
Hmm.
And I can't remember there. I'm sure there are some fans that could tell me what it is, but there was an episode where there was a
Let
race
that be
of,
your last battlefield.
thank you, where like one half of the face was black, the other half was white, or this was black and that was white, and they were fighting each other based on these differences. And being from the outside, it's like I don't get it, right? The crew of the Enterprise was like, I don't understand, like what is. It was very allegorical to a lot of the challenges that we face today. So that ability to tell a story that you can impose on current events and maybe open your mind to different perspectives is something that I think sci-fi and fantasy to a certain degree as well has that is the power of storytelling, right? To change hearts and minds, and to expand your perspective. And that's I think the main thing, and the aspirational aspect of it too, of imagining a society that we could maybe become one day is also, again, a little bit rooted in Star Trek, but I think it's true of a lot of
Sure.
different things. But it is interesting to see sometimes that, like dark sci-fi, which I also love, make no mistake, where you sort of see, humans haven't changed at all in this universe, have they?
Right.
Assholes are still gonna asshole. But,
But man, we're capable of such beauty at the same time.
I think we are.
Yeah. Yeah, Ted Danson said about that episode in particular, when they created it in the 60s, the idea went right over the network's heads. But
Yeah,
the young people in the audience knew exactly what they were talking about.
yeah, they got
And
it.
I have to thank that show and Roddenberry for Brad and Jonathan and Robert and all the people who came after who created such stuff that we love.
Yeah.
So, Lexa, this has been a treat. Thank you
Oh,
so
thank
much
you.
for coming on. This is
My
great.
pleasure. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate this. This was a lot of fun.
And we will have Michael soon. So there's a little
Yes.
tidbit out there. I haven't said anything yet, but I think he's going
And
to close
I
out
will
our season again.
photobomb the back of his interview
Please do.
with cats.
Oh my gosh. I'm going to wrap up the show on this end, but it was lovely to see you again. And you take care of
Lovely to
yourself.
see you
Okay?
too. Thank you so much.
Bye. Lexa Doig, everyone. Carolyn Lam in Stargate SG-1. I got it right. I appreciate y'all tuning in. We've got a hell of a show to finish out the season with you. Thank you so much to Tracy and Anthony, my moderating team. I couldn't get through the show without them. They prop me up and make me look good. Jeremy, Marcia, Summer, you guys are the best. Frederick Marcoux at Concepts Web keeps dialthegate.com up and running. My producer, Linda Gate Gabber Fury. If you enjoyed this conversation, and you want to see more content like this on YouTube, please click the like button. It does make a difference with the show and will continue to help us grow our audience. Please also consider sharing this video with a Stargate friend, and if you want to get notified about future episodes, click subscribe. And giving the bell icon a click will notify you the moment a new video drops, and you'll get my notifications of any last-minute guest changes. And clips from this episode will be released over the course of the next few weeks on both the Dial the Gate and GateWorld.net YouTube channels. Keep it on dialthegate.com for all of the upcoming episodes. We've got 2 coming up on Thanksgiving Day here in the United States, and got a few more before we wind down the season. My name is David Reed for Dial the Gate, and I'll see you on the other side.